Girls who had been guilted into going out with a nice guy. How badly did it spiral out of control? Story 1. After a few years of tepid friendship, I agreed to go on a few dates with my friend. Something always felt a little off about him, but I thought he was such a nice guy and figured I was just being judgmental. He constantly claimed he was in love with me. On one date, we went with a group of couples to a state park a few hours away. On the ride home, I dozed off and woke up to him getting pretty close with me. When I confronted him, he twisted it around, claiming I was imagining things. Later, when I told him I had to cancel our fourth date because I'd been grounded for accidentally setting the kitchen on fire, he punched me, mostly in the face. He actually punched me. He spent the rest of high school periodically stalking me and my sisters, ranting to literally everyone about how I just didn't understand him and how much he loved me. Apparently, he was so emotional about his true love that he sometimes acted without thinking. He would say things like, "I'm not like those other guys who make comments about your appearance. Why do you have to be such a Stacy? I was the best friend you ever had, and you ruined it all by willfully misunderstanding me and refusing to give me closure," and on and on. What a nice guy. So I guess trying to break into my bedroom window was just out of love and concern? Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. I'm a guy who went out with a nice girl. We originally met on Tinder. Everything clicked at first, and it felt like we were best friends. Later, I realized she was just saying what I wanted to hear to lure me to a first date. We agreed to meet at a local coffee shop. When I arrived, I couldn't find her, so I messaged her, and she assured me she was there. I sat down, and a woman took the seat across from me, not the woman in the pictures. She explained that sometimes she has to use other pictures because she just wants guys to give her a chance. I don't want to sound shallow, but she was unattractive, mostly because she didn't take care of herself, which was strange since she was a nurse. Regardless, we had a cup of coffee, and as we finished the date, she made a comment that implied she wanted me to take her home. I came up with an excuse about having my sister over. After that, I also made it clear I didn't think it was going to work out. Over the next few weeks, she texted me constantly, so I blocked her number. Later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize, and it included a selfie. It looked like my friend from high school. That night, we agreed to meet at a pizza place. When I arrived, it wasn't my friend. It was the same girl from before. I told her that wasn't okay. She told me to sit down because she had already ordered my favorite pizza. Feeling really creeped out, I sat down. She put her purse on the table and said, "I know how much you like guns, so I picked this up. I used to build rifles for the local police department." She opened her purse, turned it toward me, and held something inside. It looked like a .45 caliber handgun, specifically a Glock. Here's where I was lucky. I am categorized at work as high risk of kidnap or robbery for several reasons. All I had to do was get to my phone, hold down a speed dial key, and the police would show up. They also had my location at all times. I asked, "Did you order us drinks?" She said she hadn't, so I offered. She replied that she didn't trust me because I might run away, and instead got up to go order drinks at the bar herself. At that moment, I hit the speed dial and slid my phone across the floor under another table. I don't know why, but it made sense at the time. The police arrived, locked down the place. I explained everything, and they arrested her. During the investigation, they discovered that 3 years earlier she had been my nurse. I had been a diver, suffered decompression illness, and had a stroke, which left me in hyperbaric and then the ICU for some time. She had started stalking me back then. I also learned that she had been on my employer's radar, but they had neglected to tell me. They had known about almost the entire time she was stalking me. In the end, she served jail time for aggravated stalking and unlawful concealed carry, and she lost her nursing license for using her job to obtain patient information illicitly. Story 3. I was a college freshman. In the first week of school, I was in my dorm hangout area, going through the calendar on my phone to add exams to my schedule. I didn't realize that the nice guy was looking over my shoulder. He said, "I see you don't have plans on Saturday. We're going to breakfast." I continually objected, explaining that I just hadn't added anything yet. He wouldn't leave me alone all week, so eventually I agreed to go on Saturday. I purposely showed up at my worst, trying to repel him since my opinion clearly didn't matter. He ended the date by calling his mom, telling her that he had met his future bride and that they were going to give her grandchildren. He handed me the phone, so I told his mother straight up that I had no interest and was only there because he wouldn't leave me alone. Apparently, acting like a barnyard animal wasn't enough of a turnoff. His mom laughed and said, "Sounds like my boy." He would sit on the couch outside my dorm door to bombard me whenever I tried to go anywhere, followed me to and from classes for 2 months, and tried to befriend my roommate to get closer to me before moving on to a new target. She ended up getting a restraining order against him. This was not my first interaction with him. He lived in my dorm building where we did multiple getting to know you exercises that week. He helped a lot of people move in and was a self-proclaimed nice guy, as the title suggests. Most people's first impression of him was that he was nice enough, but a little off. I completely agree, this guy was creepy. Story 4. It was around the time the new Star Wars movie came out, and he kept messaging me on Facebook because I hadn't given him my number, asking to go see it since he knew I was a huge fan. He was a friend of a friend whom I hadn't really talked to, and then we ended up in the same project group at university, so we spent a lot of time together working, but strictly for academic purposes. I always turned down his not-so-subtle advances and tried not to engage with him beyond the work we needed to do. One day, when it was just the two of us working on our project in the library, he seemed off, and I made the mistake of asking if he was all right. He launched into a long story about his grandma being sick in the hospital and his parents fighting. Being the sensitive person I am, I felt bad and tried to cheer him up. I laughed at his cringy jokes and didn't roll my eyes when he hit on me. That same night, he messaged me on Facebook again, asking to see The Last Jedi. He had asked multiple times before, and I had said no, but that night he said it would really cheer him up, and that he deserved one good night. I agreed and gave him my number, which turned out to be a huge mistake. He started texting me constantly, middle of the night during lectures, and sometimes saying really inappropriate things. I remember one text at 3 in the morning where he said he was thinking about me. The day we were supposed to go, he texted saying we should meet an hour earlier to eat before the movie. I replied, "No, this isn't a date. We're going as friends." He didn't seem to mind much. At the cinema, he insisted on paying for everything, and I didn't want to make a scene, so I let him. Throughout the outing, he kept making little moves, putting his hand in my back pocket or around my waist. I kept slapping his hand away, but he treated it like a joke. During the movie, he rested his hand on my knee. I subtly moved away, but his hand shifted to my thigh. I grabbed his hand and moved it again. I could barely focus on the movie or eat my popcorn because he was so grabby. At the end, he bent his head and kissed my neck. I yelped in shock and decided to leave immediately. I didn't even check if he was following me. He acted as if nothing had happened. I called a taxi to take us to the university accommodation. I didn't speak to him except to tell him to go away and that he was disgusting. When we arrived, he had the nerve to ask if he was going to see me again and tried to kiss me. I pushed him off and he left, claiming I had hurt him and playing the victim. Later, I found out he had lied about his grandma. He had only made up the story to make me feel guilty. Story 5. This guy liked me for my taste in music, not for me. At the time, hardstyle and trance were still underground in Australia, not like they are now. I happened to be the first girl he had met who liked that music, so he thought I was cool and wanted to date me. He guilted me into dating him by sulking and acting depressed, saying I wasn't even giving us a chance, that it could turn into something meaningful, but we would never know. A big red flag should have been when his friends messaged me on ICQ, trying to sell him to me with lines like, "He's a great guy. He hasn't eaten since you turned him down. He doesn't even laugh anymore." Naive as I was, I thought, why not? He had made it sound convincing when he said I was denying us a chance. He definitely proved his worth after a week of dating. He pulled out all the romantic gestures no guy ever had, even to this day. We went to different high schools, but he skipped his last class every day to pick me up from mine and drive me home. A half-hour trip to my house, then another half-hour drive back to his. He brought me flowers for no reason, took me out to nice dinners, and really made me feel foolish for turning him down at first. After a month, he ended our relationship over the phone. By then, I thought he was the best thing ever, even though we had nothing in common. I did not even find him funny, but the way he treated me convinced me that this must be what love is supposed to feel like. His reason? He just wasn't feeling it anymore. The next day, I found out from a friend that there was a new girl at his school he thought was hot, so his plan was to drop me, chase her, and live happily ever after. It backfired. The new girl had no interest, and when he and his friends tried the same guilt trip routine on her, she was smart enough to shut it down. Meanwhile, I was devastated. It felt like there was a huge hole in my heart. I had never been spoiled with love like that before, and I had no idea how to handle the pain. I poured it into poems and sad music, playing Everything You Want by Vertical Horizon on repeat. I felt too embarrassed to tell my friends, worried they would say, "Wasn't that the creep who guilted you into dating him when you weren't even interested?" After a few months of failing to win the new girl over, guess who came crawling back? I never told him I knew about his crush on her or his failed attempts to impress her. He said things like, "I realized how much I missed and loved you these past few months. I don't know what I was thinking when I broke up with you." That was the moment I understood. It wasn't losing him that hurt me. It was losing the feeling of being loved and spoiled. I told him, "Well, the last few months have made me lose feelings for you, just like you said you lost for me." It still stung, and it took me a long time to move on from that short month of feeling loved. It took even longer to face the fact that I had been so hurt over someone who never even liked me for who I was. This was 15 years ago, and it no longer affects me, but I still remember the emotional roller coaster like it was yesterday. It wasn't my first love, but it was the first time I felt truly heartbroken, and in a way, grown up even as a teenager. Since then, I've dated and am now in a healthy, long-term relationship. We all live and learn. After that breakup, I confided in a nice guy friend, Fred. I told him how ripped off I felt and how unbelievable it was that I couldn't get over a relationship that lasted only a month when I had handled the breakup of my 3-year relationship so much better. He listened to all my sorrows and reassured me that I would get back on my feet someday. What I didn't realize was that he thought he would be the one to put me back on my feet. I told him about the manipulative tactics my ex used to guilt me into dating and how uneasy it had made me to think he was falling apart simply because I had said no. So Fred thought it would be genius to ask me out in the exact same way my ex had, and who would have thought it worked again? At first, when I turned him down, he brushed it off and said he was only joking, that he just wanted to see how I would react to him demanding we date. I let it slide, but then he started getting creepier, saying things like, "Hey, how do you know when you love someone?" I can't remember exactly how I dealt with it, but I do remember how uncomfortable it made me. He would say things like that and then leave me to stew in it. On the very last day of school, he asked me to hang out, which sounded fun at first. Little did I know, he had planned to confess his undying love for me. He leaned in for a kiss, which I blocked with my hand, asking what he thought he was doing. He sat there weeping, demanding to know why I would give in to another guy's pressure to date, but not his. By that point, I had had enough of his nonsense and told him not to talk to me anymore. He did the exact opposite. He called my home phone constantly, sent countless emails, and even showed up at my house once without warning. My mom handled it perfectly, pretending that I was in trouble and not allowed to talk to boys. But then he enlisted his female cousin to reach me instead. I remember her saying, "Fred is really upset you won't give him a chance. He said if you don't talk to him in the next 10 minutes, he's going to drive off a cliff." Long story short, he didn't drive off a cliff. After stalking my friends and me for a while, he finally gave up. I haven't heard from him since. Story 6. We were friends in high school and most of college. He was a friend of a friend, and we always ended up at the same parties and hung out in the same group. The guys in our circle would often say things like, "Aw man, you and Kyle would be so great together, you should give him a shot." I usually laughed it off since I had a boyfriend for most of that time. Eventually, my boyfriend and I broke up, and about a week later, Kyle asked me out. I wasn't really ready, but I figured it was just a first date and everyone had been pressuring me to give him a chance, so I went. The evening was awkward. We ordered a pizza and watched movies, basically what we always did with the friend group, but he wouldn't stop staring at me. I felt like I couldn't even eat because I was under a microscope. The night ended uneventfully, but then came the aftermath. We kept texting and seeing each other in the friend group, and about a week later, he asked when we could have another date. I told him that I might have rushed things and that I just wasn't feeling any connection with him. Then he said, "I broke up with my girlfriend for you." So he had found out I was single and dumped his girlfriend of 8 months just so he could ask me out to an awkward pizza date in his bedroom. The cherry on top? They got back together, and now apparently, I'm tearing their marriage apart. She found a bunch of texts from me from 6 years ago, and he admitted he kept them because he still likes me, even though I haven't seen him in 4 years. Story 7. I had been homeless for about 2 to 3 months when I finally said, "Screw it," and started dancing at a local club. I made enough cash each week to afford a place of my own, but instead I looked for roommates so I could save money and work toward going back to school. I found a group of guys looking for someone, and I moved in with them. At first it was great. We all got along. We were all nerds. My first roommate and I clicked right away. The second one was very quiet and mostly ignored me. But after about 3 months of living together, that second roommate turned into a complete creep. He would text me constantly, asking where I was and who I was with. He told me that once he graduated, we could get married and I would never have to dance again. He messaged me nearly every day. One time, I fell asleep on the couch and he held me while I slept. He even kissed me without asking. It got worse. He would constantly take my purse and hide it in his room, so I had to go talk to him and ask for my things back. After about a month of dealing with that, I started sleeping elsewhere at my boyfriend's house, or I'd just stay out until 9 in the morning. I even worked double shifts at the club, from 2 in the afternoon until 2 at night, just so I wouldn't have to go back to the apartment. One night, after finishing work at 2 in the morning, I decided to drive to the beach because I didn't want to go home yet. On the way there, another club called to see if I wanted to cover an after-hours shift. I said yes and headed back. By the time I left that club at 5 in the morning, I drove toward the beach again to watch the sunrise. Just as I was about to cross the bridge to the island, my creepy roommate called. He told me to come home, said I needed to be safe, and insisted he really needed to talk to me. I told him I didn't care and that I didn't like him, then hung up. I called my other roommate to ask where the creepy one was. The nice roommate told me he was just playing League of Legends. I sighed and hung up. Then the creepy one called again, this time saying he would kill himself if I didn't come home. I hung up and called the nice roommate back, and he told me that the creepy one had taken all the knives into the bathroom and locked himself inside. I was furious. This guy was 23 years old, acting like a high school girl going through her first breakup. I drove all the way back to the apartment, ran upstairs, and knocked on the door. He opened it slowly, and I shoved it wide. I was livid. I demanded to know what was so important that I had to come home. He led me downstairs to his car, knelt, and opened the trunk. Inside was a bouquet. I immediately said, "No, I don't like you." Then he pulled a paper from his pocket and started reading a poem he had written for me. I left him standing there, got in my car, and drove off. I had been telling him nearly every day to leave me alone, that I didn't like him, and that I did not want to date him, but he never got the message. 2 years after I moved out of that apartment, he reached out again. When I told him to leave me alone, he called me a dumpster, said I was trash, and claimed I was the worst thing that had ever happened to him. I hate so-called nice guys. I didn't get guilted into dating him, but his friends guilted me into being just friends with him. And that alone fed a fire that left permanent scars. I'll never forget him or the things he said and did to me. Story 8. This guy was very helpful and supportive after the person I was crazy about left me and went back to his old girlfriend. We spent a lot of time together at McDonald's or other public spots. One time he came back to my room to talk, and he threw me down on the bed and almost did it before I realized what was happening. I was so emotionally fragile that I burst into tears, which made him stop just short of essaying me. I told the story to my friend, and she burst into tears, saying, "He didn't stop with me. I tried to make him stop, but he just kept going." As I shared the story with more people, I heard horror stories from other girls he had essayed, or from people whose roommates or sorority sisters he had essayed. Yet everyone else thought of him as a nice guy who was easy to talk to. This was back when calling the police wouldn't have helped, but I told as many people as I could in our social circle that he was a serial offender. I felt I had to, since the girls he had actually essayed were too ashamed to speak up. Story 9. The date wasn't too bad, although he kept changing almost every single sentence to match my interests. He might say, "I like ice cream." I'd reply, "Cool, I like frozen yogurt." Then he'd twist his words and say, "Oh yeah, that's what I meant. Ice cream is nice, but frozen yogurt is amazing." And this went on for 4 hours straight. By the end, I had no idea what he was actually like. He also kissed me in the most awkward way possible. I guess he thought it would be romantic and spontaneous, but it wasn't. Then he kissed me again when he walked me to the train station. He hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe and started making weird noises. He started texting me before I even got home, and when I didn't answer, he got upset. I told him he was nice, but I didn't think we'd work out. He said it was cool and asked if we could stay friends. Silly me, I said yes. We kept talking for about a month. During that time, he was very friendly, constantly checking if I had slept with someone else and making sure I knew how good he was in bed. This was also when I met my current boyfriend and started meeting a lot of new people at university, so our conversations became less and less frequent each week. Then one day, he asked me out. I said I wasn't sure he was completely okay with us being just friends, so it wouldn't be appropriate. He went on a massive rant about how he had actually been seeing someone else at the time, but they broke up shortly before, how he was so over me and didn't even think I was that attractive anymore, and how nothing would happen. I said no because I was broke and couldn't fully enjoy myself while worrying about spending too much. We were supposed to go to a Metallica concert. Apparently his best friend had spent 120 euros on a ticket, but then at the last minute found something better to do. He promised he would take care of everything and that we could chill at his place with pizza and films, just as friends. I said I could consider the concert, but there was no way I'd stay over. I mentioned texting someone else to see if it would be okay to sleep at their place afterward. He jokingly asked if it was someone I was sleeping with, and I said it was none of his business. Then he started saying how much of a tart I was for sleeping with other people and not him, how unfair it was that he knew me so much better but felt like others had more rights to me than he did. We kissed, and I did not want to. It was so random. I realized his intentions only as he made out with me, and I stopped it quickly. Then he called me a few more names, claimed he was such a nice guy and didn't deserve to be treated that way, and we never spoke again. Story 10. All my friends said a guy from our group of friends was very nice, even though I felt he was creepy. I went out with him once, deciding to give it a chance just to be polite, but I immediately regretted it. He asked what I thought about being in a relationship with him. When I said no, I wasn't very interested, and we had only been friends before this. He said he was disappointed with my answer and expected something more worthy of him. He claimed that saying no was disrespectful. We met once after that, when he surprised me with a visit a few months later. He asked me to ruffle through my hair because he wanted to feel my scalp, treated me like a dog, and insisted I sit next to him so he could be closer. He also thought it was a great idea to mention that he sometimes hears voices in his head and has dreamt of ending people's lives. I rushed him out of my apartment and onto the street. I just wanted him gone. I checked my keys 5 times to make sure he hadn't taken any. I've had to see him a couple of times since, and he is the creepiest, most socially inept person I've ever met. He's so aggressive and impulsive. I am genuinely afraid he might essay or even harm someone someday, and I'm still nervous that the person could be me. Story 11. He was the first guy I ever really dated. We were in high school and had been friends for a long time, probably since elementary school. We started dating when I was a freshman. At first, he was really nice, seemed to respect me, and showed interest in the things I cared about. I was head over heels for him. I didn't yet know that I was worthy of being loved, so I was willing to do things I shouldn't have just to keep that feeling of being loved. As time went on, things began to go downhill. He started comparing me to other girls at school, pointing out the features he preferred on them and telling me it was too bad I didn't have them. He told me I needed to dress nicer. I had always been a jeans and t-shirts kind of girl, but he insisted he wouldn't talk to me unless I wore certain things. My makeup had to be done a certain way, and he pressured me to dye my hair blonde. I never went fully blonde, but I did get dramatic highlights because of the pressure. He said I should lose weight and demanded that I pick him up from school in the morning since I had a car before he did. Much of the money I earned from working went to him, as he demanded an allowance. He did not have a job. When he found out I didn't believe in God, he forced me to go to church with him on Sundays and to read the Bible throughout the week. He even texted me to brag about approaching hot girls and suggested that I should take lessons from them. It eventually reached the point where he pressured me into sleeping with him, convincing me it was the only way to show him that I loved him. He took photographs of us and regularly demanded to be intimate. I later discovered he had shown the photos to his friends and told them how much of a tart I was for him. Despite all this, he would sometimes buy me gifts, send messages saying he loved me, and hand me notes in class. He told me he was doing me a favor by loving someone like me. It was incredibly confusing. I eventually broke up with him, but it took extreme measures to stop him from stalking me. I believe that relationship has had lasting damaging effects on me to this day. Story 12. My wife was hounded by a nice guy who even bothered me when we were dating. Back then, my wife worked with him and he was madly in love with her. She never knew this and didn't return his feelings. They were friends because they had a mutual male friend. He once asked her to go to the cinema. She agreed as a friend, but he tried to take it further. She politely turned him down, explaining they were good friends and nothing more. Some months later, she met me. I knew the mutual friend, and we hit it off. We didn't officially get together for a few months, but we both liked each other. We were just very shy. Since I knew the mutual friend, the nice guy hung out with me a lot more, as we all tended to spend time together. In more private moments, he would tell me things about her, like, "Oh my God, she's a massive whore. She kisses everybody," and similar claims. Being me, I gave people the benefit of the doubt until I saw something with my own eyes. It turned out to be completely untrue, and he was making it up to scare me off. He also said she was still hung up on her ex, who was supposedly a crazy person. He even once invited her ex to go out with us, whom I never met, apparently to intimidate me. I welcomed it, trusting that he was a nice guy. Meanwhile, he constantly flattered her, and I'm sure spread false things about me. About a month later, we officially hooked up on a night out. I officially asked her out and she kissed me while we were at a nightclub. Everyone saw and cheered, since it was clear we had liked each other for a long time. The nice guy witnessed this and was visibly upset. He kicked a bottle across the dance floor and was nearly thrown out by the bouncer. Later, he came up to me and shook my hand, saying, "The best man won." I wanted to tell him off. She wasn't a prize. It wasn't a contest. And if she wasn't into me, that would have been fine, as we were also good friends by then. Our mutual friend later told me that the nice guy had broken down crying in front of him, saying it wasn't fair and complaining that I beat him to the punch and was seeing his girl, even though she had never been into him at all. That was 12 years ago. I dealt with him a few other times after that, when he dated a friend's sister, and he acted like a complete tool then as well. He even challenged me to a fight, which I accepted. He instantly backed down. To be fair, he probably would have beaten me, as I've never been in a fight before or since. I haven't seen him in years, and hope he's gotten over himself a little. I'm very happy not to be seeing him anytime soon. Story 13. I met a guy through online dating, and after a couple of weeks of chatting, decided to cool things off because he gave off a creepy, needy vibe that frightened me. He constantly asked about ex-boyfriends, insisted he would be good for me, asked intimate questions without any encouragement, and wanted to know personal details. I forgot all about him until months later, when he sent a random message apologizing for his previous behavior, which he blamed on a difficult breakup. Time passed, and he seemed like a new person, so I gave in and met him. Our first couple of dates seemed fine, though there were a few odd comments I should have paid attention to. Then he started questioning where I was and who I was with, but I foolishly ignored it. The first and last time I stayed at his place, we went out for a drink beforehand. He judged me for having a couple of beers. When we got back, I wasn't feeling up to anything intimate, so I firmly said no and went to sleep. Later that night, I woke up to him on me. I never confronted him about this. I pretended I hadn't woken up, made my excuses the next day, and blocked him from my life. I've never told anyone this before. I just wish I had listened to my instincts and kept well away. Story 14. I was the nice guy in this case, and to this day, I feel terrible for my actions. This started 12 years ago, when I was 19. I met a girl at a club. We hit it off immediately, and she became my girlfriend. At first, everything was fantastic. We were genuinely happy together, and I couldn't believe my luck at finding someone as amazing as her. About 1 month in, I did something very stupid. I met another girl. We had drinks and ended up sleeping together. Instead of being honest with my girlfriend, I decided to keep it to myself. Everything seemed fine, except for a lingering voice in my head telling me that if I could do something like that, surely she could as well. This voice grew louder over time. I started joking about her seeing other guys, those half-jokes that aren't funny and mainly make the other person feel bad. I began checking her phone and reading her social media. Eventually, I became certain she was cheating on me, even though there were no signs of it. I started cutting her off from her friends, especially male friends, and got angry if she didn't respond to my texts asking where she was, who she was with, and why she wasn't home. I began doing surprise visits and became furious if male friends were nearby, even in large groups. My reasoning was that what we had was special, and she shouldn't want to spend time with anyone else. I manipulated her by changing tactics within minutes, being friendly and kind one moment, then catching her off guard and getting furious the next. I used my kindness to extract information, trapping her in a constant cycle of guilt. Fast forward a bit, we had been together for a year, and she had gone to university, making new friends. We were fighting every day. One time, I left her house after an argument and realized I had forgotten my phone. When I went back, I found her crying in her room. In that moment, clarity struck, and I broke up with her, justifying it to myself as a messianic act. Surely this would have been the end, but it wasn't. What followed were 3 years of me texting and calling her, trying to find out if she was seeing anyone and getting angry when she was. It never stopped. Even if we didn't meet for months and I had convinced myself I had changed, I would repeat the same behavior the very day we met up. I thought that if she saw how nice I was now, she would want me back. When she didn't, I guilt-tripped her. This went on for years and destroyed me emotionally. I saw the harm I was causing her and felt horrible, but the voice and sense of entitlement kept returning. Every time she offered friendship, I would unleash another guilt trip. At some point, it stopped. I began analyzing my own actions and cut off all contact with her and any of her friends who had also been my friends. I forced it all away, and every time the voice returned, I tried to analyze the source of my entitlement so I could fight it. I can't fully explain how it ended, other than noticing one day that I no longer felt those urges. For a long time, I avoided any form of romance, afraid I would start the cycle again. Eventually, I met someone else, and we've been happily together for 7 years. From the start, I was very open about my past, which I think helped a lot. Now, when pangs of jealousy do arise, I recognize that they are irrational and can easily shrug them off. It's something that will likely never fully disappear, but I know it comes from me, and I know where to seek help if needed. I feel terrible for what I have done to another person. No one is entitled to another person's love, attention, or affection. To those on the receiving end of a situation like this, walk away, cut contact, end it. People do not change overnight. Even after many years, the weight can remain buried deep in the mind. In the end, it is personal responsibility to face your demons and do something about them. Do not be guilted into becoming the pillar of stability for someone else to cling to. The best thing you can do for both of you is walk away. Story 15. I was guilted into a 1-year relationship with someone. He was super nice at first, and I was young and naive. He flirted, seemed honest, and I thought, what the heck? Why not give it a go? Big mistake. I realized quickly that he just wasn't for me. We had very different political views and clashing opinions on almost everything. On top of that, he was degrading. He made fun of my weight and tried to convince me I was fat. I wasn't at all. I had a healthy BMI and had always been sporty, but being young, teenage, and vulnerable, it crushed my self-esteem. When I finally worked up the courage to say I didn't want to be with him anymore, he guilted me into staying. He said things like, "You'll never find a guy who'll love you like I love you, and if you leave me, I'll end myself." All the typical manipulative lines a so-called nice guy uses to trap you. In the end, I ghosted him. We were supposed to meet up, but I never showed. I changed my number, deleted social media for a couple of years, and moved out. I never heard from him again, and I am very glad to say that. Story 16. I was on a hiking trip with my sister and other people from our village when we met a group of guys drinking and having fun. It was German Father's Day, so the scene wasn't unusual. Somehow my sister struck up a conversation with them, and we ended up invited to a party at one of the guys' houses later. No big deal. We brought her boyfriend along and were expecting a fun evening. My boyfriend couldn't come because he was on a biking trip with his dad. When we arrived, nobody else was there. The guy told us everyone else would arrive later, even though we were already 30 minutes past the time he had given us. We started drinking and having fun. It was clear he had a thing for me. He invited me to go to festivals with him, and my sister's boyfriend told me I'd be silly to say no since he would definitely be going too. Eventually, the others arrived. At one point, the homeowner asked me to go for a walk with him, saying he needed some air. We walked a bit, and suddenly he turned to me saying I was the love of his life, the girl meant for him, and the most beautiful and smartest girl he had ever seen. I was shocked and didn't know what to say except, "I have a boyfriend, you know." He said he didn't care that we were clearly soulmates, and then kissed me out of nowhere. He told me he would break up with his girlfriend for me, which he had never mentioned before, and that I should do the same. Luckily, my sister blacked out in the bathroom, and someone shouted for help, unlocking the door. We went back upstairs, and I took care of her. When his girlfriend arrived, he pulled me aside again and said he would do it now, right there. I said no, and he told me to take my sister and leave. I did. The next day, he messaged me on Facebook, calling me a hussy, claiming I had led him on, and saying he almost broke up with his future wife for a shrew like me. Story 17. I was that girl who loved the bad boys. My nice guy had been my best friend for several years, and I always knew he liked me, but I was too busy chasing jerks. For 9 years, we were best friends and grew up together. He watched me pick all the wrong people and get hurt, while other friends kept telling me to give him a chance. I didn't listen. 2 years ago, he asked me over for dinner. It seemed casual at first, but I soon realized it was for Valentine's Day. I can't say I felt guilty, but it was a little awkward. I was nervous, expecting tension, but when I arrived, everything was lovely. He had cooked a meal, bought flowers, a bottle of wine and chocolates, and lit candles on the table. I don't drink much, so he ended up finishing the whole bottle because he was so nervous, but the evening felt natural, and I decided to give it a go. We're now approaching our 2nd anniversary, have a beautiful home together, and an Egyptian Maucat, and we couldn't be happier. Because we were friends first, we know each other so well, we finish each other's sentences and never run out of conversation. We've yet to have a serious argument beyond whose turn it is to wash up. He is genuinely the best thing that has ever happened to me. Sometimes the nice guy really does win. Story 18. I was the nice guy in my first real relationship. I met a girl through a friend's girlfriend. At first, everything was casual. We hung out like friends, playing paintball, billiards, and so on. But I really liked her, and she had recently broken up with someone. I always tried to cheer her up, and eventually I politely asked if she would consider trying a relationship. To my surprise, she said yes. I was the happiest guy on earth that day. We started dating seriously, going to the cinema and spending time alone. But I became clingy. I wanted to see her all the time and for her to come over constantly. In hindsight, I understand why it creeped her out. She grew increasingly uncomfortable and eventually she broke up with me. I didn't force her to do anything, but my clinginess had driven her away. I was devastated. I was depressed for over a year, but I eventually got my life back on track. I apologized to her for how I had acted, and now we are just normal friends, not as close as before, but on good terms. In the end, it was good for me. I learned from my mistakes and ended up in a healthy relationship with my current girlfriend. Without reflecting on my past failures, I wouldn't be able to sustain this relationship. Story 19. I'm a guy and gave a nice girl a chance. She was one of those I'm not like other girls types. We went out for a casual pizza and beer dinner. At first, she was awkwardly charming, repeating what we'd now call memes, like, "Oh my god, pizza is a lifestyle choice." Cute the first time, but by the 10th time, it was just annoying. She talked about herself the entire time, mostly humble bragging about her faults, like, "It's just that I care too much about my friends," or, "I guess I'm just the type of person who's totally honest and can't accept dishonesty in others." I could have left for 10 minutes and it wouldn't have interrupted her. It was like watching a one-person episode of Gilmore Girls. Afterwards, we left separately, and we didn't kiss or anything. The next day, she messaged me on Messenger asking when our next date would be. I politely told her I didn't think we had a connection. She continued messaging me for about 2 weeks with increasingly desperate texts. It started with, pick any place, and I'll buy. Then, feeling lonely tonight, want to come over for some fun? Followed by Tina, the mutual friend who set us up and I are talking about a three-way and we need your opinion. And finally a picture of her cleavage, which I later learned from our mutual friend was fake. Eventually she started dating someone else and the messages stopped. Story 20. I moved to another state with my sister, who made a few guy friends. One of them saw her with me and begged her to set up a date. I reluctantly agreed because my sister kept saying how sweet and nice he was. On the first date, he gushed about how gorgeous I was and how much he admired my intelligence. He said he was going to make me his queen and take me around the world, but I had to pay for my own meal and his this time. I told him I was only interested in being friends. He begged my sister to convince me to go on another date, but I declined. Eventually, we moved back home, and he came to visit my sister. While he was visiting, he kept staring at me and telling my sister to just hook him up with me. It was my birthday, and I just rolled my eyes and said, "Come on, I'll take you out with my group of friends too." At the bar, he was clearly into me, and I was getting annoyed because he wouldn't let me relax and enjoy myself. I told him I really only saw him as a friend, and in front of everyone, he yelled at me, calling me a horrible person for leading him on and nothing but a thought. I ended up crying from the embarrassment. My guy friends wanted to talk to him after hearing what happened, and my sister ran up to me, telling me to go make him happy again. He came down to see me, and this is how I was treating him. I just went home. The next morning, my sister told me he was sorry and wanted me to come say goodbye at the airport. Needless to say, I didn't. Story 21. The guy offered to take me to a restaurant on campus that he claimed everyone needed to experience. It was just a small sandwich diner, so I figured the worst-case scenario was wasting an hour. Several people at the party said they were going too, telling me how great it was, what they usually ordered, and when we should go. I didn't know him very well, but he seemed like a nice, shy, quiet nerd type. Everyone liked him, and I'd never heard anything bad. Plus, we wouldn't be alone. What could go wrong? He offered to pick me up at my dorm. Even though it was just a short walk, I accepted, knowing he lived farther away. Once I got in his van, one of the first things he said was, "I hope you don't mind, but I thought we'd go somewhere nicer." I was dressed down. It was basically a flatbread pizza joint with funky artwork, but he was in a nice shirt and pants. I felt like I couldn't say no since I'd already agreed. I was hungry, and I was already in a moving vehicle. Then he drove me at least 20 minutes away to Olive Garden. That's when I realized he clearly thought we were on a date and that no one else was coming. Cue awkward conversation as I tried to finish mediocre pasta so I could get back to my dorm. Campus buses didn't even go to that part of the city, so I had no way to leave without him. It was just an awkward dinner, not quite a red alert abort now situation. On the drive back to campus, he mentioned his frat house was having a party and suggested we head over. I'd been to the house dozens of times with friends and knew most of the guys, so I thought, why not? A fun party might salvage this weird evening. Of course, when we got there, it was actually a sorority party. No outside girls allowed until after 10 or 11. It was only around 8 or 9. We had to go up the back stairs straight to his room. His roommate was avoiding the party, which was fine. We thought, okay, just need to kill an hour. At least we aren't alone. The roommate eventually left after we decided to watch Star Wars. I'm not sure if he asked him to leave or if he just assumed we were on a date. Either way, I love Star Wars. And now we didn't have to talk for the next hour. Now I was stuck in his bedroom, and he was trying to sit way too close to me. He started putting his hand on my leg, then moved to putting an arm around my waist, and tried to make his way upward. I tried to stay calm and not escalate things, partly because I knew this guy could blackball me from ever returning. It sounds silly, but many of my guy friends were from that house, and my girlfriends all partied there. Years later, I even met my husband there, so it was an important place in my life. I stood up and asked for a drink, hoping he had nothing in his room, and luckily, he only had water. I started texting a few friends who I knew would be at the party to rescue me and bring a drink. He answered the door, and suddenly a group of my friends saw me behind him, wide-eyed pantomiming "Save me." No one had known I was there since we had snuck in, and the music was so loud you couldn't hear anything happening in the rooms. He tried to keep me in his room, using the "you aren't supposed to be out there yet" excuse, but somehow my best friend was already there and pulled me out. I ran away and never looked back. I never said anything about what happened, except that what I thought would be a casual social dinner had turned into a crappy forced date. That is, until he started telling the other brothers of the house what a jerk I was and how I led him on. Luckily, everyone got to hear the truth about what a creep he really was. It wasn't supposed to be a date. I hadn't flirted with him that night, and I definitely wasn't giving any lock me in your room and touch me vibes. Everyone who mattered believed my story, not his. It also helped that the others who had been part of the original plan to go to the campus diner remembered and couldn't believe he had forced me to Olive Garden instead. It could have gone much worse, but it never should have happened at all. Story 22. I wasn't exactly guilted, but my parents liked him, which is probably why I didn't cut him out sooner. I never saw him as a romantic interest. Obviously, he did. On paper, he seemed like a good candidate. He had a stable job, was politically active, not for a party I liked, but my parents approved, and seemed respectable. But he had a creepy, controlling side. He once said he'd help me lose weight while I was drinking hot chocolate, even though we were never officially together. He had matching scarifications with an ex, and managed to convince me to go to a bar I explicitly said I didn't want to visit. He was manipulative. The bottom line is, while my parents apparently saw him as an ideal son-in-law, I wasn't into him. I thought he was too old, wasn't attracted to him, and our ideologies and personalities clashed. We went for drinks a couple of times, and each time only reinforced our differences. Even years later, my mom would say, "Oh, he was nice. Why did it never become a thing?" Story 23. I wasn't exactly guilted, but we had many mutual friends and acquaintances. He seemed nice enough, with just a hint of nice guy, but I thought it wasn't fair to judge him without actually getting to know him. I had just come out of a long-term relationship and felt maybe I was being too picky, so I decided to open my horizons. He was an hour late, and I only stayed because I didn't want to waste my expensive drink. The entire evening, he spent contradicting me, not in a polite conversational way, but in a way that made him visibly annoyed whenever we disagreed, even on common topics. There were many troubling moments, but a few really stood out. He said he wouldn't be upset if President Obama were assassinated. That set my radar off. But the real jaw-dropper was yet to come. We didn't politically agree, but regardless, I would feel terrible if someone I didn't like, politically or otherwise, were killed. He then said, "You know, I have to be honest, I'm really surprised you aren't a shallow shrew since you're really pretty and friendly. I used to think you would just be fake friendly." I wish I were exaggerating, but he said that word for word. I had no idea how to respond. My jaw literally dropped for a minute. I was genuinely shocked that someone would say that, especially on a date, and think it would come across as a compliment. To top it off, he left me standing in the rain when his Uber arrived first. He texted me constantly afterward, asking for a second date, convinced the first one had gone perfectly. I tried to gently part ways, explaining that I didn't think it was going to work out. I'm not easily offended, but his assumptions about me were hurtful. He considered himself a nice guy, and after that date, I knew my original instinct had been right. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.